Welcome to the Explainer. So if you're a focused learner looking to seriously level up your language skills, you are absolutely in the right place. Today we're totally ditching that old school rote memorization. Instead, we're stepping right into true, real-world reading comprehension. We're going to completely master Lesson 38 from our foundational text, and we'll do it by breaking down the actual logic and flow of the language itself. It's going to be great.
All right, here's our quick roadmap for today. 1. Mastering essential vocabulary. 2. Spotlight on Lesson 38. 3. Words in action. 4. Story time with Gulliver's Travels. And finally, 5. Test your knowledge. Let's dive in.
Section 1. Mastering Essential Vocabulary. Time to check out our basic building blocks.
Okay, so here's our raw data straight from Lesson 38 of 504 Absolutely Essential Words. Just take a look at these terms: biography, drench, swarm, wobble, tumult. Now you might be thinking, great, another random vocab list. But actually, scratch that. These aren't just obscure words pulled from the dusty back pages of some forgotten dictionary. These are the exact practical words used every single day by educated speakers, journalists, and authors. Sure, staring at a simple list can feel, well, a little dry. But we are going to bring these static terms vividly to life using the actual context provided right in our text.
Moving on to Section 2, Spotlight on Lesson 38. Let's do a deep dive into what these words really mean.
Notice how using a little bilingual scaffolding can completely lock in a concept? Take our first word, biography. The English definition is simply the written story of a person's life. But when you bring in the Korean translation, pronounced chonggi, it instantly frames the concept for you. It tells you this isn't just some casual story told over coffee, right? It's a specific, formal, literary record of someone's existence. Think about how our source text mentions the biography of the legendary architect Frank Lloyd Wright, or notes that the biography of Malcolm X is a massively popular book. It's not just a tale. It's a documented, heavily researched life.
Now, let's see how this builds when we drop it into a much more complex thought. We've got this sentence structure straight from the text. The reading of a biography gives a knowledge of people and events, and then we compare that with the second half of the thought that cannot always be obtained from history books. So what's the big takeaway here? The crucial point is that biography absolutely isn't just a fancy synonym for history. Structurally, it functions as a totally unique tool. It's a distinct literary genre that gives you the specialized, intimate knowledge that you literally just cannot get from a broad, generic history textbook.
Pivoting over to our next word, we've got drench. This simply means to wet thoroughly, or to soak. And once again, the vivid Korean instructional translation from our source, pronounced hempyeok juksida, is just fantastic. I absolutely love this because the phrasing perfectly visualizes the physical action. When you're drenched, it's not just a little splash of water or a light refreshing mist. No way! It is a complete, heavy, totally overwhelming soaking. You are fully 100% saturated.
Let's look at this word in an immediate, super relatable context to really cement it in your memory. The text gives us this. A heavy rain drenched the campus and the students had to dry out their wet clothing. You can picture that perfectly, right? The sudden downpour out of nowhere, the desperate sprinting across the quad, the incredibly uncomfortable wet clothing sticking to your skin. By attaching drench to this highly visual everyday scenario, your brain categorizes the definition so much more effectively than if you just tried to memorize the standard dictionary definition to wet thoroughly. It's all about making those connections.
All right, Section 3, Words in Action. Because, as we know, context is absolutely everything.
One fundamental truth about language is that a word's exact flavor can shift depending on its environment. Take the word swarm, for example. Our text gives us three very distinct, almost completely unrelated scenarios. First, swarms of children playing in the park that eventually dwindled down to a handful. Second, mosquitoes swarming out of a swamp. And third, a campus that swarmed with new students in September. I mean, we go from kids playing to literal insects to college freshmen. But swarm flexibly applies to all of them, which really showcases its dynamic versatility. It conveys this large, moving, often overwhelming group entirely regardless of who or what actually makes up that group.
Let's do that exact same exercise with the word wobble. We have three more incredibly varied examples here. Little Perry wobbling around in oversized shoes, a baby wobbling when it first begins to walk alone, and a clown, lacking experience, wobbling along a high wire until he finally reached safety. Do you notice the common thread? Whether it's a toddler in giant shoes, a baby taking its very first steps, or an entertainer literally fearing for his life,
The word brilliantly illustrates this specific state of physical instability. It hits the nail on the head when describing that side-to-side, unsteady movement. The core meaning stays perfectly anchored, even as the subjects wildly change.
Moving to Section 4, Story Time, featuring the classic Gulliver's Travels. Let's look at some macro-level application. Okay, looking at the second half of our source material, we find Jonathan Swift's absolute classic, Gulliver's Travels. But here's the cool part. It's been cleverly adapted to seamlessly include our new Lesson 38 vocabulary. Seeing a full block of text like this actively prepares your brain to process a continuous story. It forces you to actively utilize that new vocabulary to actually follow the plot, rather than just lazy decoding one isolated sentence at a time and immediately forgetting it.
Let's map out the sequence of events in this adapted story. I want you to see how our new vocabulary literally drives the action forward. First up, Gulliver is shipwrecked, and he is described as drenched and weary on the shore. Next, he wakes up entirely tied down with swarms of little people moving all over him. Then, after finally being unbound, he marches through the city streets, causing a tumult, a massive uproar or violent disorder wherever he went. And finally, he manages to escape the cruel tyrant king. Just look at how those four words, drenched, swarms, tumult, tyrant, act as the actual structural pillars holding up this whole narrative.
Now, looking closely, the concluding sentence of this Gulliver summary reveals a beautifully advanced usage. The text reads, "Oddly enough, the verdict of generations of readers has taken no heed of the author's intention in Gulliver's Travels." Right here, verdict isn't a literal jury in a courtroom saying guilty or not guilty. Instead, it's being used as an abstract collective judgment made by society over hundreds of years. This perfectly demonstrates the incredibly sophisticated, high-level application of the word when you find it in real literature.
Section 5. Test your knowledge. Yup, it is time for a little active participation.
All right, here's your first challenge straight from the text. The principal probed the cause of the blank in the cafeteria. I'm going to give you a second to think. What word from our lesson today perfectly fits a massive disorder or crazy uproar in a crowded school cafeteria? Got it? If you said tumult, you completely nailed it. The principal was investigating the tumult. Excellent job.
Okay, let's try just one more. Melinda shrieked as the unstable pedestrian blanked into the path of the oncoming car. Think about the actual physical action being described here based on those context clues. We've got an unstable pedestrian clearly moving unsteadily from side to side right into grave danger. The absolute perfect action-oriented fit here is wobbled. The pedestrian wobbled into the path.
So, to wrap this explainer up, I really want you to remember that true comprehension is an active, ongoing journey. We definitely didn't just sit here and memorize a boring list of words today, right? We explored their nuances, we decoded their structural purpose in some pretty complex sentences, and we even watched them literally drive the plot of a classic story. So here is my final challenge to you. Find a way to weave just one of these words, maybe tumult or drench or swarm, into your own conversations or writing today. Seriously, which word are you going to choose to master first? Keep learning, stay focused, and I'll catch you in the next explainer.